today's Dharma sharing by Bhante Akaliko, organized by Mahasatipatthana Buddhist Society of Klang. Today is the 18th of June 2022. Other than the live audience from Zoom here, this talk is broadcasted to another 9 Buddhist societies across Malaysia and all the way up to Hong Kong. Before we begin today's talk, here's a few housekeeping rules. All participants, please stay muted. To ask questions, please raise your hand and we'll ask you to unmute. Or you can always type your question at the chat box. We are very grateful to have with us Bhante Adibalo today. Bhante Adibalo, Akaliko. Sorry, Bhante. Akaliko is an Australian monk in the Theravada forest tradition. They first encountered Buddhism as a teenager and spent over 20 years practicing in different traditions before taking full ordination under Ajahn Brahm as his preceptor at Bodhiana Monastery in 2016. Bhante is currently, like he said just now, staying with his long-term teacher, Ajahn Sujato, at the end of the world in an apartment. Bhante is currently the founder of Rain Bodhi Buddhist Community and Buddhist Chaplain at Western Sydney University. He's on the board of directors for Buddhist Council of New South Wales. Today's interesting topic is visualizing the path. Bhante cancelled the doom and gloom talk due to his COVID situation. After what he shared with us on everyone will get sick, even monks get sick. Yeah, Bhante. Okay, after this, Bhante will be staying in Thailand for his Vasa, and I'm glad to report that Bhante will be appearing physically in Malaysia somewhere between October and December. Please look out for the announcement on MSBS Facebook. Bhante, for now, I humbly request that you lead the homage to the Buddha and taking of 5 precepts. Over to you, Bhante.
Okay, thank you so much, Terence, and thank you to the Mahasatipatthana Society of Klang for inviting me to give this series of talks. My apologies for getting sick for the last talk, which was meant to be about doom and gloom, and afterwards I thought there's probably enough doom and gloom in the world that we should focus on something more positive. And this talk was already planned, actually. And so the subject of this talk is visualizing the Dharma. And we're looking at the similes of the Buddha. And we're looking specifically at 3 concepts of generosity, ethics, and mental development. And so what we're doing here is part of that process. So what we're doing here is developing our generosity, our ethics, and our mental development, even in the course of this short session today. And I'll explain how that's so as we go along. But we're doing meritorious deeds. We're creating good punya. And this is a really important part of the Buddhist path. And so today I want to share a little bit about punya through the similes of the Buddha. And so we're going to begin by reciting the Namo Tassa 3 times, and then we're going to recite the refuges and then the precepts. So this is all very beautiful stuff that we're doing here. this is a way to inspire the mind. And we're actually developing merit as we go along. We're paying respects to the Buddha, our teacher. We're appreciating the Dharma, the teachings. And we're also paying respects to those enlightened beings who've realized the teachings for themselves and attained liberation, the noble Sangha. And then we take the precepts, which is developing our ethical conduct. And so these are really beautiful things that benefit our mind. That's mental development. So I'm going to weave these three topics throughout the talk today. And I think it's always useful, especially when we do something a little bit ceremonial or ritualistic, like a beginning to a talk, as we often do in Buddhism by doing these things, to understand and appreciate why we do these things. And they're not just things that we have to tick off, but they're important parts of our practice. But they're only important if we pay attention to them and think about them in certain ways. So it's very easy just to come along and bow 3 times, light some incense, burn some candles, do a little bit of chanting. But the meaning and the intention that we have when doing these things really matters. So I invite you to think about that as we go along, and every time you come to practice, actually. So let's begin. I think Terence will share the words for those people who aren't familiar, and just in case I forget, we can read the words on the screen. So begin with the homage. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. And now we'll recite the 5 precepts. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kame sumichachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musawada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Surameraya majjapamadhatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugatim yanti. Silena bhoga sampada silena nibutim yanti. Tasma silang visodaye. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So going for refuge, paying homage to the Buddha, reciting the precept, these are all meritorious deeds. These are all conditioning our mind. And when we condition our mind in this way, we can expect good results. Our faith in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha increase. We remind ourselves of the importance of these 3 things, the triple gem, in our life. And by paying attention in this way, we incline the mind more and more towards wholesome things. And so these are very special ways that we can begin our practice to inspire the mind, bring joy into the heart. And we can feel happy knowing that we're doing something meritorious. These are things described by the Buddha as being good for us and good for others. So when we do these sorts of things, we can be happy, right? So that's already, if we've got a little bit of happiness in our hearts, that's a wonderful thing. And so many people have so little happiness. So we're very fortunate to have access to these teachings to help us develop these wholesome states of mind. And so once we've done a little bit of chanting and begun to inspire the mind, we often follow it with some meditation. And there's a reason for this, and that is that the mind is already in a good place. We've started to demarcate our usual life from the outside world, our everyday, our ordinary existence. We've put a bit of a boundary around it by doing this ceremony. And then we become inspired, and then the mind's in a really good place to meditate. We're already feeling good. We've done something meritorious. We can sit and be happy. And so the meditation that I'd like to share with you today is actually a recollection. It's one of the anusatis. You might have heard of the anusatis before, anusatis, depending on how you want to pronounce it. These are things that we often do at the beginning of our meditation practice or our ceremonial practice as well. For example, when we recite the Itipiso and the recollection of the Buddha, the recollection of the Dharma, the recollection of the Sangha, these are anusatis. These are ways of inspiring the mind, and these are recollections. In the same way, we can recollect our generosity or our virtue. We can recollect heavenly states. We can recollect things like death, for example. And so I often teach these recollections as meditations because often when we come to sit, we've had a very busy week, right? We've got a lot of things going on in our mind, and we come to sit, and sometimes we want to force our mind to become clear of thoughts, just like that. We've been so busy. The habit pattern of our mind is always thinking, always planning, always worrying, we're doing. And so then we come to sit, we somehow magically expect that we're just going to become quiet and peaceful, just like that. But this isn't how it works. You've probably all seen that in your own meditation, right? You come to sit and you realize just how much is going on in your mind. Eventually, of course, that will settle. It takes time. The mind's been traveling very fast. You try to put the brakes on. It's still going to take some time to slow down before it comes to a stop. But one useful way of working with that busy thinking mind is to do a recollection at the start of your practice. Recollecting the qualities of the Buddha, recollecting how fortunate you are to hear the Dhamma, the teachings, thinking about how you might become an enlightened being as well. Or, as we're going to do today, recollecting our own generosity, the practice known as Chaganussati. Chaganussati. Chaga means liberality, generosity, giving. So this is a beautiful part of Buddhism, something that I really love about Buddhism, that it places generosity, like many other religions, at a central place in the teachings. Generosity is really important. We're letting go of stuff. We're giving, we're benefiting others, and we're also reducing defilements in our own mind, like selfishness, greed, miserliness, being stingy. When we give, we feel good. And then we come later to recollect our generosity. We remember what we've done. And this brings so much joy into the mind. So powerful. This act of generosity has echoes throughout our life and in our mind. And so when we recollect generosity, we recall the times that we've been generous. And this joy will naturally appear, naturally. Why? Because it's connected with something beautiful and wholesome, something that's good. And so it's natural that the result of doing a good act like generosity will bring happiness into our hearts. It's natural. And that joy, already that joy is pretty good, right? You feel glad. You feel good about yourself. This is pretty good. And this is only the beginning of what's possible when we recollect generosity. That joy develops in our mind and becomes piti, rapture, zest, thrill. We get rushes of positive feelings in the mind and through the body. We get tingles. We get excited. Our mind is really happy to be there. We're experiencing a nice mental state. And then bodily tranquility, kaya passaddhi, develops out of this piti, out of this rapture. Our mind is moving from the external world inward. And part of that process is the body starts to recede. And we're experiencing less of the sensory world and more of the mental world. And that's why our body relaxes and becomes peaceful. And then from that, we get this beautiful deepening into bliss, sukha. And from that bliss, we get to see things more in like a stillness develops in the mind. And that's samadhi. We can see clearly once we've had samadhi. And out of that, we can start to develop wisdom. So this is the journey that's possible from practicing generosity. I'll just go through those factors once again. So we practice some giving, and then we come to recollect that giving later. From that, joy appears naturally in the mind. From that joy arises rapture. From that rapture, the body becomes tranquil. When the body is tranquil, the mind becomes blissful. And that bliss draws the mind deeper and deeper into stillness, samadhi. And so that simple action of doing a good thing like giving leads to very deep, very blissful, and very profound results for us. And so this is why it's so important that we never dismiss our generosity, never diminish our kindness, that we recollect it and we make the most of it. The Buddha said that when we do this, the path is born within us. We experience joy connected with the teachings. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to practice in this way. And so that's what we're going to do for the next 20 minutes. We're going to practice our recollection of generosity, Chaga Nusati. So let's begin by taking a few moments to settle in, and then we're going to relax the body a little bit, allow the mind to become calm and peaceful, and then we'll launch into our practice of Chaga Nusati. And I want to just mention two images to help us as we get into our meditation. The first is one of my favorite images, and I'm talking about this because of the topic today, which is visualizing the Dharma, similes given by the Buddha. And so this is one of my favorite images when it comes to meditation. the image of a turtle that is being attacked by a jackal. And so that turtle, if it's clever, tucks its little front legs in, tucks its little back legs in, tucks its tail in, and pops its head inside the shell. And then it's safe from the attacking jackal. So in this jackal, of course, is an image for the defilements, for things of the sensory world, sensory pleasures, and the five senses and the mind. These are things that distract us from our meditation, right? And so we tuck ourselves away. We're practicing this form of renunciation when we come to meditate. We don't care what's going on outside in the world. In this few moments, we're practicing meditation. And so we withdraw and we're safe. And the other image that I really love for meditation is how to practice. Do you strive? Do you try really hard? Or are you too relaxed, a bit careless? This image, Buddha suggested an image of a quail, a small bird, and we're trying to hold it in our hands. If we hold it too tightly, we're going to squish that poor quail. If we hold it too loosely, the quail will escape. And so similarly, with our mind, we want to be firm, but not rough. We want to be aware, but not overexerting ourselves. And we don't want to be too lax. We don't want to just treat this like a time to just think about stuff from our day or plan our weekend. We want to be aware that we're meditating, and we need to have some sort of small effort involved in doing that. So it's this balance that we need to bring to our mind. So these are two images of meditation I really love. I'll share some more in a little while. And this is how we should approach working with our mind. So let's settle in, withdrawing our little legs, our tail, our heads into our shell. And being okay to let go of all those things out in the world, all those sensory experiences we could be having right now. We're okay just to let them go, to withdraw, to turn away from that world, to turn inwards. And so we practice this renunciation. I want to be here right now. This is my time for meditation. And so as you're sitting here, begin just by allowing the body to relax. Feel that you're letting go of tightness, letting go of tension. Softening the muscles of the body. And so gently scanning the body, the top of the head, all the way down to the toes, seeing where there's some tightness, and by letting go, releasing. So soften the face, unclench your jaw. Relax the shoulders. Releasing all the way down through the arms. Relaxing all the way down through the fingertips. Consciously releasing. And the same with the back of the body, feeling as if you can soften the spine. Release any muscles, either side. And relax all the way down to the tailbone. And then coming to the front of the body, releasing all the muscles of the chest, relaxing deep inside the abdomen, letting go of tightness, tension, the entire torso. Relaxing down through the hips, allowing the legs to soften, letting go of any tightness in the joints, the knees. Releasing the calf muscles, the shin, moving down the feet, soft, relax, allowing any tightness or tension to drain away. It feels good to relax the body. Where previously there was tension, tightness, by letting go, we have comfort, ease. Perhaps you notice that when the body is relaxed, the mind naturally, all by itself, becomes calm and peaceful. We let go of thoughts, not getting involved. Just as we relax the body, we relax the mind, becoming more calm, more quiet, more peaceful. And so now that we're more calm, more peaceful, we begin our practice of Chaganusati. You are a good person. You are a kind person. You are a generous person. You are a kind and generous person. Every day, in so many ways, you have given. How wonderful. How beautiful. Perhaps you've given a loved one a present. maybe donated to charity, offered some food to the monks and nuns, given money to a homeless person, fed the birds at the park. So many ways you have given. Perhaps you volunteered your time to help others, your community. Or maybe you gave that gift of time, listening to a friend's problems. Perhaps you gave a gift of the Dharma, sharing the teachings with others. Or maybe you just gave someone the benefit of the doubt, gift of being judge-free. Or maybe you gave a smile. There's so many ways you have given, been generous, been kind. How wonderful, how beautiful. Why don't you allow yourself to smile? Let it feel good inside. You are a kind, generous person. Allow joy to develop in your mind, thinking, how fortunate, how wonderful for me that I am kind and generous. In this world full of selfishness, full of greed, full of miserliness, stingy people, how wonderful that I am kind, that I am generous. How wonderful. This thought brings joy to your heart. So for the next few minutes, recollecting your generosity, recalling times you were generous. How does it feel? See if there's a feeling associated with generosity, a goodness, a joy. If so, allow that joy to develop in your heart. Practicing in this way the next few minutes. And now it's time to come to the end of this short practice. But take a moment firstly to review. How did it feel to relax the body? Did your mind become calm? And how was it recollecting your generosity? Was it difficult? Was it easy? Did you feel glad? Did some joy come into your heart? And see if you can understand why. And so now we'll relax our awareness, arising from the meditation, coming back to this space surrounded by good friends. You can gently open your eyes. So that is the practice of Chaganusati. Have any of you practiced that before? It's not often taught, but it's a very powerful practice. And for me, it's something that brings so much joy into my mind. And of course, once you've got that joy, meditation becomes very easy. And so it's a very useful technique, especially at the beginning of your meditation session, to just recollect your kindness, your generosity, or your sila, your ethical conduct. See if you can get that joy coming up into your mind. Then you'll be very happy to sit for however long. And this, of course, isn't just something that I've made up. It's a teaching given by the Buddha in the suttas. And those words that I said, how wonderful it is that in this world full of miserliness and all of that, this is the instructions on how to practice recollection of generosity given by the Buddha. Okay, so we've done something meritorious, right? We've recited the precepts, we've done a bit of meditation, and this is good because that's the topic that we're exploring today, merit, punya. And I wanted to explore this by looking at some of the similes of the Buddha. And I wanted to take a little bit of a step back. I'm aware we're probably already running out of time, and I may have thought about this too much. But I wanted to explore the similes that the Buddha uses to describe merit. And to do that, I wanted to just take a step back, firstly, and to get us thinking about why similes were used by the Buddha and how we can understand these similes in a way that really helps our practice, transforms our practice, actually, this very visual language that the Buddha employed, and how we can learn from this in a way that becomes very meaningful to us and very instructive, so that the meanings of the teachings become so clear and easy to understand, and we have a useful way to remember those teachings. And so we're going to take a little look at the Buddha's teachings. Now I'm going to have to just give me a moment to get to the screen. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. You can see that, right? Good. Okay, so this is what we're doing. We're visualizing the path, or perhaps making the path visual, whichever way you want to look at it. And this is some words from the Buddha. He said, I shall give you a simile, for it's by means of a simile that some wise people understand the meaning of what is said. And so the Buddha employed similes as part of his teaching practice. The Dharma is so full of similes, as we'll see in a second. So there must have been a reason for this, right? So take, for example, even some, and I'm showing images here because I think it makes those similes come to life a bit. Take, for example, this next slide. What are you looking at here? We're looking at the darkness. We're shrouded in darkness, delusion, ignorance. The simile that the Buddha gave for these concepts is darkness. And then we have light, enlightenment. So this is the whole path in two easy to understand similes. It's a movement from darkness to light. So we start off as being shrouded in the darkness, and little by little, we learn a little bit of Dharma and we start to move towards the light. So simple, but so profound, right? And so when you start to think about it, so much of what we understand of the Dharma, so many of the teachings we've heard are based in these very visual, easy to understand similes used by the Buddha. And so we'll explore some of them as we go. Even the idea of the Noble Eightfold Path, the idea that we're on a spiritual path, that we're on a spiritual journey, that we're moving from one place to another. This is a metaphor. This is a way of understanding what we're doing. And this is how we understand the training that we undertake. All of those various things, such as right behavior of body, speech, and mind, meditation, all of these things combine in what we term the path. And of course, it's not always straight, it's not always easy, but this path is taking us somewhere. And so it's a useful simile, right? This idea that we're moving from one place to another, that we're on a journey, that we are going in the right direction, hopefully. This is something that the Buddha used to illustrate his teachings. There are so many things like this in the Dharma. Some of you will know that very stock standard phrase that the Buddha used, that lay people used or monks used when the Buddha gave a talk. And they said things like, "Excellent, Master Gautama, excellent. You have revealed the teaching so clearly. It's like you uprighted something that was overturned, that you showed the path to people who are lost, that you turned, gave light in the darkness so that people could see. You revealed the hidden." These are ways that people appreciated the Buddha's teachings. So we have those four things. You overturned something that was up the wrong way. You revealed something that was hidden. You gave light in the darkness so people could see what was there. And you pointed out the path to people who are lost. So these are all images of learning in the Dharma, of understanding the teachings. And these very visual images are perfect to help us remember. Because can you imagine back in the day at the Buddha's teachings, you didn't have the internet, didn't have books full of the teachings. You had to listen. It was an oral culture. People had to listen carefully to the teachings. They had one chance only. And they would have to take that, remember that, and bring it back to their place, and then they'd have to recall the teachings. And it's extraordinary, actually, that we have had the Dharma handed down to us so perfectly preserved from person to person over the course of thousands of years, and very little was lost. And so different today. You know, we rely so much upon books, upon technology, to remember that we haven't got that skill anymore of remembering. And even that stock standard phrase that I just repeated to you, I've read that so many times, and I know I got the order confused. And I wonder if you can remember those four things, those four different things: turning up something that was upside down, revealing what was hidden, showing the path to someone who is lost, and the last one, a light in the darkness to see what's there. So if you couldn't remember those, then what would you do when you go back to your place of meditation later on? You kind of sit there kind of going, oh. But that's the reason these teachings are so visual, because you can see it in your mind. And this helps you to remember. And so this is an important part of why the Buddha used these similes. Firstly, to convey really complicated ideas in a simple way that people understood. So like that image I gave you at the beginning of our meditation of that turtle tucking its arms and head and tail in. Simile of our meditation practice. We draw our mind away from the sensory world represented by the limbs of the turtle, and we draw it inward, and we're safe and we're protected there. We're not going to have our limbs bitten off by the jackal. We're not going to be tempted by the sensory pleasures of the world. We're meditating. Or that image I gave of the bird, the quail in the hand. So many people struggle with how to meditate. they try too hard, or they don't try hard enough. They don't get the balance right. But this image, so powerful, so simple, so easy to remember. And when you're meditating and you find yourself trying too hard or not trying hard enough, this image might come into your mind. Ah, this is how to practice, find a balance between these two extremes. So you see how these similes are really useful. I just quickly go through the types of figures of speech, we call them, that the Buddha uses. So there's 4 types I want to just go through very quickly. The first is one I've already talked about, which is the simile. Second is metaphor. Third is an analogy. And the last one is allegory. So these things are ways that the Buddha teaches using what we call figures of speech. And I'll go through these because I know that English might not be your first language, so I thought I'd use the slides to quickly go over them. Sorry if it's a bit studious, but it's useful. So simile is when we use the words like or as in English to compare one thing with another. And so, for example, one of my favorite suttas, the Araka Sutta, human life is like a dewdrop. So this is what a simile is, like or as. Human life is like a dewdrop in that it's brief, fleeting, and full of suffering and distress. I'm not sure that the dewdrop knows that, but it's certainly brief and fleeting. It doesn't last long. This is a really powerful way for us to think about impermanence through the use of this very common simile of the lotus with a dewdrop, or a dewdrop on a blade of grass, as it is in this case. This is a powerful teaching, right? So we should pay attention to these sorts of teachings. Then we have metaphor. So metaphor, similar to a simile. Metaphors can be similes in that they're a phrase or a word that's used to describe something that it isn't, without using like or as, but still something that's similar. For example, I've already mentioned this one, the Noble Eightfold Path is a metaphor, or the concept of stream entry, not actually stepping into a stream, right? It's a metaphor. It's a concept. It's a way for us to understand this process. You see, that's how many similes the Buddha used. And our experience of the Dharma is full of these things, but we often don't reflect upon just how special they are and how amazing the Buddha was as a teacher. It's hard to invent these sorts of similes. It's an amazing skill that the Buddha had. The next is an analogy. So an analogy is when we compare something with something else to make an explanatory point. So we use analogies a lot in English. So the version that I want of the analogy that I want to share with you here, it's a bit hard to read it like that, so I'll just explain it. You might have heard the analogy of how long an eon is. An eon is a period of time. How long is an eon? Very long. How long? Well, it's as long as it takes to erode the largest mountain in the world by using a very soft cloth just to stroke it gently once every 100 years. This is an analogy. It gives us an understanding of time, gives us an understanding of just how long an eon is. And so it's a very, very long time. And we know that because of the analogy. And the last one is an allegory. So an allegory is quite a little bit different in that it's usually a representation of something quite abstract. And we it allows us to express these ideas in a really approachable way. And often it reveals something that's secret or has a hidden meaning. And so you might be familiar with the sutta about the fortress, which is in the Anguttara Sevens, where our mind is compared to this fortress, this citadel, it's often called. And you have this post at the center of the fortress, which represents faith. You have the guard who stands watch, which is mindfulness. You have these weapons, which are all the teachings that we've learned. These are our weapons. And so this is a big picture broken into small parts, all which mean something. And we understand the whole by revealing these secret meanings of each of those parts, so that we have this large picture, which is basically the whole path in that sutta, in the image of a fortress. So it's a really beautiful way the Buddha teaches, through similes, through metaphors, through analogies and allegories. And so you can tell that I've done too much research in this, right? Because this is something that I really love. But if you also love similes, then I encourage you to go to Sutta Central or to Access to Insight. And as we'll do here, check out just how many similes you can find in the index. And you can search for things like, oh, acrobats. What is acrobats about? About watching after yourself or watching after others. We have an archer, which represents the brevity of life, or some other things. What else we got? A rabbit caught in a snare. This is fetters. We have the rafters of a house, defilements. A rag, saving a good part of a rag is a simile for subduing hatred in the Anguttara Fives. And so, as you can see, there's many, many similes, and I had to restrain myself a little bit. This is one of the ways that I learned the Dharma, and I encourage you to do it too if you get a chance, to just have a play through the index of similes, because something will stand out that matters to you, that means something to you, that sticks in your mind. And then you've got that simile for this important concept, this teaching, and you'll never forget it. It's a really great way to remember the Dharma, and it's an easy way for you to understand the teachings. But of course, there are so many. I had to just stop myself. And of course, this is like the Buddha, not that I'm comparing myself to the Buddha, but he also had a lot of similes at his disposal. He had a lot of knowledge at his disposal, but he said, when he was in the forest, the rosewood forest, he said, all that I've taught you is just a small fraction of what I know. It's like this forest so full of leaves. And he picks up a handful of leaves and he said, this is what I've taught you. It is small compared to all the leaves in the forest. But what I've taught is just the Four Noble Truths. Everything I've taught is about the Four Noble Truths. And the rest of those leaves in the forest, I haven't taught you because they weren't important. And so, coming to the point, I've had to curtail my enthusiasm for similes and to use a framework to contain them. And that framework is punya, the grounds for making merit, Punnakiriyavatthu. So this is something that appears several times in the suttas, the idea that there are 3 grounds for making merit. And we've been doing some of them already, as you'll see. So the first ground, generosity, giving, dana. Wonderful, we've already thought about that. Second, sila, ethical conduct. Well, we took the precepts, right? Third, bhavana, mental development. It's things like meditation or listening to the teachings. So we're already doing 3 meritorious deeds. We're developing these grounds for making merit. So these are found in the suttas, but they're also found in later commentaries. And the commentator Buddha Gosa, I'll go back. The commentator Buddha Gosa divides it further, and I'll explain that in a little while. But just thinking I'm going to run out of time for sure. But let's start with this beautiful image of the ocean, which is a simile for what happens when you make meritorious deeds. So here we have a beautiful image of the ocean. The ocean, of course, is something that's very vast, very wide, very expansive. And the Buddha said that a single meritorious deed has incalculable effects in the future for us. A single meritorious deed is incalculable, the amount of benefit that it brings to you. He said, in the same way that we don't measure just how much water is in the ocean, in the same way, we can't measure just how much merit comes from doing a good deed. We just say there's a lot of water in the ocean. In the same way we say there's a lot of merit made from doing good deeds. And so there's this image of vastness, yeah, which I really like, and that the idea that the stuff that we do, small as though it may seem, actually can be a really large part of our spiritual path. And so the first ground of developing merit is generosity. So we've talked a little bit about it, but I want to share my favorite series of similes with you describing generosity in the suttas. The first is the image of a cloud, a rain cloud, a cloud that doesn't rain. I'm just going to skip ahead a bit. This kind of cloud is like a person who is stingy, someone who doesn't give. This cloud doesn't rain. This person doesn't give. So this is the first person that can be compared to a rain cloud. Second is a cloud that rains locally, only in one place, just like that water you see here gushing down in that one place. This is like someone who gives, but they only give locally. They only give to people who they know or like, people they have some sort of investment with. This is how a lot of people give. They only give to their family or friends. They don't give to strangers. So this, the Buddha said, is like a cloud that rains locally. Someone who gives in a limited way. And the third is a cloud that rains everywhere. A cloud that pours water down all over the earth. And those big drops of rain, they fill the tiny little rivulets in the earth. They fill the small creeks, all the cracks, all the rivers get full. And those rivers feed into lakes, and those lakes feed into larger rivers. And that, of course, all goes out into the ocean. And so this is a beautiful analogy, a beautiful simile of giving. This is how the Buddha instructs us to give. We should be like a cloud that rains everywhere. We should give whenever we have the opportunity. There's so much merit attached to giving. We give, we're happy to give. People come, they ask, we give. We give to people who we don't care about. You know, we're not invested in them. We give to people who are everywhere. We just give. We're happy to give. And this, of course, is a beautiful part of Buddhism, that when people ask, you give. And this is beautiful because it generates so much goodness in your heart and reduces all the defilements, as we discovered through our practice. So dana is just one form of giving. We can also do things like dedicate merits of our practice. And you might know the verses, yata varivaha pura pariparenti sangarang ewa meta etodinam petanam upakapati, that we chant when we're pouring the water. Yeah, have you done that little ceremony of pouring the water to remember people who are deceased? We're transferring the merits to them. Actually, we're just dedicating. We can't really transfer those merits, but we dedicate it to them. And the act of pouring is also a metaphor, right? When the rivers are full, it overflows. That's what the text says. And our merits, our goodness, when we're full, it overflows to others. And when we pour the water, we overflow that vessel and it pours into another vessel. This is a way for us to think about our goodness. When we're good and kind and generous, even those good qualities that we've developed, they overflow so much, we give them to other beings without distinction, just like that cloud that rains everywhere. Without distinction, we give to our good qualities away. Even our good qualities we give away by dedicating merit. It's a beautiful analogy. And that's why generosity is such a profound base for developing merit. So many good things that come from being kind and generous. So that's generosity. I wonder if you remember the next basis for generating merit. 3 things. Can you remember? See, we'd be lost, wouldn't we, without the internet or without our books? So hard to remember. But some of you might have remembered that it is sila, ethical conduct. So Buddha goes to the commentator, divides ethical conduct into the following: observing 5 or 8 or 10 precepts or more. So we've already done that today, right? So good on you, developing punya through your ethical conduct. Hopefully you keep it not just for the period that we're sitting together, but also through the week. And we can pay reverence to elders and holy people. This is a nice way to develop our ethical conduct and meritorious deeds. And we can also go and make a pilgrimage to holy places, or even, I guess, go to, if we can't get to holy places, we can go to places like our local Buddhist center. And this is a nice way that we keep our sila in check by going to these sorts of places. So these are some ways that we can develop merit through ethical conduct. The basic form, of course, is keeping those precepts. It's really important if we can do that, because it benefits us and benefits others. And so the image I want to share with you of ethical conduct is this. This is a simile taught by the Buddha in, I think it must be in the Anguttara 3s. I'm not completely sure. It could be even the Itivuttaka. This image is the farmer's 3 urgent duties. It's something I often share because it's so beautiful. The farmer has 3 urgent duties, and these are urgent duties that we have as meditators as well, as people who are on the spiritual path. 3 urgent duties. First is that field that you just saw. We need to prepare the soil. Farmer knows this, right? You need to have the soil properly tilled, take out the rocks, and make sure that the soil is in good condition. And so this is compared to the training in higher ethics. We need to develop our ethical conduct. This is the basis for us. Think about it, a farmer wants to grow some crops, right? So the soil, the ground, needs to be well prepared. Everything depends upon that soil. And it's the same for us. Our practice depends upon our ethical conduct. Our whole spiritual life depends upon our ethical conduct. It is the soil of our practice. And what we grow, what we can grow, depends upon that soil. And so this is a beautiful image to remember. I'm trying to grow something in my spiritual practice. I have to make sure the soil is well prepared. By practicing the precepts, by keeping them, by observing them, and understanding how they benefit you and benefit others. So that's the first urgent duty this farmer has, to prepare the soil. The second urgent duty is to plant the seed in that soil. Shouldn't plant the seed before you've prepared the soil. Should plant the seed after the soil has been prepared. And this is developing the training in higher mind, developing the adhicitta. This is things like meditation. So I say you've got to make sure that the soil is ready. So many people just jump straight into meditation without thinking about sila. It's often taught in this way in the West. I'm not sure how it is in Malaysia, but many people just want to practice a meditation path, but they haven't developed the mind through sila yet. And so they try to jump ahead thinking they can take a shortcut, but they don't usually succeed. And so that seed is our meditation, our mental development. That's what's going to grow, but we have to have that soil ready to go, right? So the seed is planted, and then the next urgent duty is irrigation, water. So we need to let the water in at the right time to help that seed grow. We need to water it regularly to help it grow. And this is the training in higher wisdom. So this is things like understanding the teachings, learning the Dharma, hearing teachers talk about the Dharma, understanding these similes. This helps us water that seed of meditation, helps keep that ground in good condition. And then when the soil has been prepared, when the seed has been planted, and when the water has been given, then that seed can grow and can flourish. And in this beautiful image that the Buddha gives, we can't force it. You can't try to pull up that seedling and turn it into a fully mature plant. No, it happens in its own time. We can't force it, but it will grow if the causes and conditions are right. If we've prepared the soil and if we water it regularly, that seed will grow. So this is a wonderful way for us to think about our meditation practice. Have I got the right causes in place? Do I listen to the teachings? Do I understand how to meditate? And then to realize, we can't force these things to grow. It happens naturally when the time is right. But I've just got to get those causes and conditions in place. And so like that teaching I gave before, Chaganusati, some of you will have experienced a lot of joy. Some of you will have found it really hard. Can't force it. You can't make it happen. It has to arise naturally. But our job is to make sure that the causes and conditions are in place that allows for that meditation to flourish. Does that make sense to you? Yeah? So a beautiful image of why sila is so important as part of our practice. Another really beautiful image that I often remember is the image of a shadow from a mountain and the way that shadow clings to the earth. in the late afternoon or early morning, you see the mountain casting that long shadow over the valley. And in the Bala Pandita Sutta, the sutta about fools and wise people, the Buddha tells us that this shadow is like our ethical conduct. If we are good, and then this shadow will stick to us. Our good qualities will have good results, and they will stick to us too, just like that shadow. If we're bad, then our bad deeds follow us around like a shadow. Mountain can't escape its shadow, right? So whether good or bad, we're going to have a shadow. What kind of shadow do you want? But the point is that our actions stick to us, just like a shadow sticks to us. We can't escape them. This is a good way to remember ethical conduct and why it's so important. These things matter. These things are a part of us, and they'll be part of our future. So what kind of shadow do you want in your future? And then this final image of the sila part of this talk is the image of a water dipper. And I picked this one because I think it shows the cleverness of the Buddha in being able to take something really simple and familiar and turn it into a profound teaching. So the story of this simile comes from one of the exhortations the Buddha gave to his son Rahula. This is the exhortation at the mango grove, where the Buddha is talking about lying. And so the Buddha comes along, and the first thing he does is he washes his feet. So he uses a water dipper to wash his feet. And then afterwards, he uses that dipper to give the teaching. He says to his son, shows him the water dipper and says, you see how little water there is remaining in this water dipper? That's how little is left of an ascetic, a spiritual practitioner. That's how little is left of a spiritual practitioner's nature when they tell a deliberate lie. It was full and now it's almost empty, right? That's how little remains of their good qualities if they tell a deliberate lie. And then the Buddha tosses that little bit of water away like that and says, that's how little remains. It's tossed away just like that. And that's what it's like when someone tells a lie. They toss away their goodness. They toss away their good qualities. And then he turns that water dipper upside down. He says, you see how this water dipper is turned upside down? When someone tells a deliberate lie, it's like that. They've got it up the wrong way. And then he turns it up the other way and says, you see how this vessel is hollow and empty? That's what it's like when someone tells a deliberate lie. They are also hollow and empty, just like that. And so this is an amazing teaching. It's so powerful. When you get tempted to tell a lie, you can remember this image of the water dipper. Don't throw away your good qualities. Don't be hollow and empty like that. Buddha said that someone who tells a deliberate lie is capable of doing any bad deed. And so it's something important for us to remember. And so this is just one of my favorite analogies. I don't know if you like it too. I'm not sure. Perhaps some people are smiling. But these are useful ways for us to remember these teachings, especially on things like ethical conduct, because it's such an important foundational part of our spiritual life. And the next image I want to share with you, actually I'll move ahead to that third area of punya that we can develop, which is bhavana. So we usually think of this as mental development. And again, this is taking from Buddhaghosa. He divides it into 4 categories this time. Firstly, meditation, which we've already done. So we've already been developing punya through bhavana. Second is listening to the Dharma. Here we are developing so much merit, right? Third, teaching the Dharma. So of course, this isn't just for people like me giving talks. You also teach the Dharma in your daily life by example, or perhaps you give a little teaching to someone who's interested, like a friend or family member. And then the last one is correcting wrong views. And this is something that we get when we listen to Dharma. We start to appreciate the teachings and we understand them and we correct any mistakes we might have. So for example, if you said before you came to this talk, oh, there's 4 grounds for making merit that the Buddha described in the suttas, and then you heard the teachings and it's like, oh, there's 3 grounds. You're like, oh, okay, now I know that, right? And so it's really useful to listen to the teachings because we learn, right? And that is part of our mental development. Learning the teachings is part of our spiritual development, and this is part of our meritorious deeds, ways that we become good through our practice, right? We need to hear the Dharma. Remember that Dharma is like that water that irrigates that seed and soaks that soil. So listening to the Dharma, teaching the Dharma, straightening our views. But most of the time, when we think about mental development, we're thinking about meditation practice. And so, just conscious of the time, we're going okay, aren't we? We're going okay. I'll share just a few images and then we'll wrap up and we can have some questions. So this is the image of a gold panna. Many of you will be familiar with this sutta, the Gold Panna Sutta. It's in the Anguttara Threes. I think it's number 1, maybe one of the first suttas in the Anguttara number Threes. And so for those who aren't gold pannas, who aren't fossicking out there in the world, you might know that you use a little pan in the water and you're looking for small bits of gold, and you use the water to purify the contents. So you're kind of looking and you're like, oh, okay, you get rid of the dirt, you get rid of the rocks, and you can use the water to wash those away, and then you see the bits of gold there, right? This is the first part of the process of purifying the gold. And then this is, of course, an extended simile that the Buddha uses to describe our spiritual practice through meditation. And so we begin like that gold panna, getting rid of the big defilements, the big obstacles to our practice, getting rid of those large impurities like rocks, dirt, sand. These are impurities that hide the gold from us. We want the gold, right? We want to be the gold, but it's hidden by impurities. So the first stage of purifying the gold is removing those gross defilements of body, speech, and mind. When we purify those things like our ethical conduct, not stealing, not committing sexual misconduct, not killing, not telling lies, when we do this, we start to purify our mind. This is before we even sit down to meditate, right? So that process begins. Our meditation begins before we sit down. Just like we have to prepare the soil, in the same way, we need to remove some defilements from our mind before we can meditate. Otherwise, we're going to sit down, we've got this really yucky mind, full of impurities. And so the Panna starts by removing those gross defilements. And then, once those defilements have been removed, it's time to purify the gold even further. There's still small corruptions in that gold, middling corruptions. These are things like, in our practice, the hindrances, things like thoughts of sensuality, thoughts of harm, thoughts of cruelty. These things are corruptions in our mind. They're more subtle than those gross defilements of body, speech. In our mind, the hindrances, these occlude our vision of being pure and bright. These get in the way of our mental development. And I'll talk more about the hindrances in a second. And so we need to purify those as well. And then, and this is what we do basically in our meditation practice. And then there's still some little small defilements in the mind. And the Buddha says this is like those very small impurities remaining in gold after it's been processed once, melted down, getting rid of those middling defilements. There's still some small impurities that linger, and it needs to be refined again. And this, the Buddha said, is like things like thoughts of home, thoughts of family, thoughts of status. These are basically ideas of self. These are the last defilements to go. And then the gold is completely pure and workable. When the gold is workable, you can make any ornament of the mind that you want. And so this is a very beautiful way for us to understand our practice. We don't try to get to the end of the path without getting rid of those impurities towards the beginning. It's a process. It takes time. And I don't know about you, but I know in my time as a spiritual person, starting when I was a kid, my spiritual practice over time has progressed. I have made some small development of my mind through meditation, but also through my ethical conduct and through generosity. And this has helped me. And I'm still working towards that purification that comes towards the end of the path. But I understand now that this is a process and that I can't expect things to proceed without making sure that I follow the correct process. I need to purify my conduct, then purify my thoughts, and then overcome this view of self. So it's a process, yeah? It takes time. It's okay. We're on the right path. So this is one way that we can think about our practice. And the last series of images I want to share with you is how the hindrances are referenced by the Buddha. So the hindrances, of course, sorry to keep on stopping and starting, the hindrances are things that block our meditation. These are things that we generate inside our mind that come from causes and conditions. And most of you will know the 5 hindrances, am I right? Yeah, can I get a show of hands? Yeah, people know. Some people know, many don't. You know, that's great. If you don't know what the hindrances are, fantastic, because you're about to find out. And it's really useful to know the hindrances, because otherwise we don't have any useful labels to identify unwholesome thoughts in our mind. So when you're sitting and meditating, it's the hindrances that are going to come along and take you out of your meditation, or the hindrances that are going to make your meditation really hard, really uncomfortable. And so the Buddha described 5 hindrances to our meditation. And these can be very gross or very fine. They can appear at the beginning or the middle of our meditation. They can appear towards very refined states of mind. And overcoming the hindrances is the purpose of our meditation. Once we overcome these hindrances, what we're left with is a mind free of hindrances, bright, clear, and powerful. And this is the mind that enters samadhi, a mind that is free from hindrances. And so the Buddha described a really simple way for us to understand what these hindrances look and feel like in our mind. And I found when I share these images with people who have never understood them before, they get it. They finally get it, and they're really appreciative. So I hope it helps some of you too. So the way we want our mind is to be clear. Just like the Buddha said, a bowl of water. When we have a bowl of water that is clear and pure, we can see all the way through to the bottom. We want to see all the way through to the bottom of our mind. We want to penetrate truly and clearly the nature of our existence, what we are, what it means to be, what is the nature of our existence. And so when we have a mind that is calm, clear, powerful, we can see. And so the things that block our seeing are the hindrances, and they can be illustrated through this image of a bowl of water. So this is what we want our mind to be like, but it's not, is it? It's full of hindrances. So what are these hindrances? Number one is the hindrance of sense desire. Sense desire is, like the Buddha said, colourful dye thrown into that water. You can see there's a lot of light, a lot of colour, a lot of movement in that water, right? So this is the hindrance of sense desire. We sit down to meditate, but there's so many things out there in the world, right? You sit down and suddenly you think, I'll just have a cup of tea. Sense desire. Or you think, oh, I should have that piece of chocolate cake. Sense desire. Oh, wonder what's on Netflix. Maybe I should just watch that instead. Sense desire, right? All the things of the sensory world. These firstly prevent us from getting to sit down on the cushion, don't they? Right? It's time to meditate. Oh, but suddenly you've got so many things to do. These are all usually very much from the sensual realm, the realm of the senses. Oh, I'll just go and do this one thing. Oh, I'll just quickly check my email. I'll just go and do that. This is sense desire. And then you sit down and the mind is invaded by all these things, right? And they're so colourful and bright. They tempt us. We want to reach out and grab onto those. We love colour. We love movement. We love all the pretty things in the shops, right? The sense desire. This is something that's going to take you away from stillness, away from peace. While you still associate happiness with objects from the sensory world, you're not able to get peace that comes from withdrawing from that sensual world and discover the bliss of meditation, because you're putting your happiness in the wrong place. Sensory objects are so impermanent, so unstable, and the happiness associated with them doesn't last. The happiness of meditation lasts a long time. And so this is the danger of sense desire. It distracts us from our practice and distracts us in our meditation. Just like colourful lights, colourful things in the shops, this bowl of water full of coloured dye. The next hindrance is the hindrance of ill will. Ill will is like anger, resentment, not liking something. The Buddha said this is like a bowl of boiling, bubbling water. See how agitated the water is, full of those boiling bubbles? This is like your mind when there's anger or ill will, resentment, hatred. The mind bubbles and boils, gets so stirred up, right? Agitated, just like that bowl of water bubbling. You can feel it inside you, that anger welling up, right? And it's powerful. It's got a lot of energy behind it, doesn't it? It feels good sometimes to have this mind of anger. You feel so alive, right? But it's agitated. It's busy. It's bubbling. It's not peaceful. It's not calm or clear. You can't see the bottom of that bowl when it's got all those bubbles bursting through it. So anger, resentment, ill will, this all occludes clarity, hides clarity. It disturbs the mind. And this is why anger, resentment, ill will, these are hindrances. Will just be bubbling and boiling, hot and bothered, and will never develop that calm, peaceful, tranquil, and cool mind that comes with meditation. So the next hindrance is the hindrance of sloth and torpa, or dullness and drowsiness. And the image that the Buddha used is pond slime, those green plants on the top of a pond of water, with water plants that kind of stay on the surface, like duckweed and things like that, algae, those sorts of things that cover the surface and turn green. So this image, sloth and torpa, is these are funny words in English. I'm not sure how they sound to non-English speakers. Sloth and torpa, dullness, drowsiness. What happens in your meditation when you start to sink, when you start to feel sleepy, you find yourself nodding off, right? This is dullness, drowsiness. It's like this layer of slime that covers you, makes you feel heavy and stuck. You know, it's like you can feel the weight. It's forcing you down. So one of the feelings associated with these hindrances is this idea of sinking. And the mind sinks down, becomes stuck and solid, just like a small bird, perhaps, trapped in that pond, trapped in those green plants, can't move. In the same way, our mind, when that hindrance of sloth and torpor is present, becomes very unworkable. And perhaps all of you have felt that feeling of becoming sleepy, and sleepiness is quite close to delusion. We're moving away from clarity towards ignorance and not knowing. So this hindrance, when it comes along, is like that pond slime covering us. We can't see clearly anymore. And it weighs us down. So this is that beautiful hindrance, that beautiful image of sloth and torpor. And I know that it's been very helpful for lots of people I've spoken with. They understand this hindrance, you know, that's what it looks like, right? The next one is restlessness and remorse. So restlessness is usually the desire to move forward and do something, and remorse is usually an agitation caused by the past. And here we see this bowl, which has, the water has been churned up by the wind. This is the image that the Buddha uses to describe restlessness and remorse, like a bowl of water that's covered in waves caused by the wind. So this is our mind. When we're restless, it's like the ocean, choppy, with lots of waves that buffet us, right? Oh, I just got to go and do that thing. Oh, I should be doing this. Or, oh, I haven't done that. Let's do it now. These are the thoughts that take you away from your meditation towards the future. And remorse, of course, is something that pulls you back towards the past. Sometimes we get hit by a large wave of remorse, right? When we experience restlessness or remorse, our mind is agitated, just like the water in that bowl. The waves buffet us from one thing to the next. There's no stillness, there's no clarity, there's no peace or calm. We can't see clearly when the surface is covered in waves. We can't see our mind clearly with all of these thoughts of restlessness and remorse. And the last hindrance is the hindrance of doubt, not knowing. Am I practicing correctly? Am I doing meditation the right way? Am I on the right path? Does Bhante Akaliko know what he's talking about? This is doubt. And this doubt is like muddy water. It's dirt mixed with water, right? You can't see. So this is that hindrance of doubt. When we have doubt in our mind, we're so unsure. We don't know which way to go. Is this the right thing to do? Is that the right thing to do? We're mixed, yeah? Just like that water, that muddy water is mixed with water and dirt. We can't see when the water is really muddy and unclear. We don't know where we're going. And that's why doubt is a hindrance. We're unsure, and that uncertainty creates a lot of problems for us. Am I practicing correctly? Is that what the teaching said? I don't know, I can't remember. When we're unsure, we can't move. We're stuck, just like being stuck in the mud. And so, of course, the way to overcome doubt is to inquire, to ask questions, to learn more. And in this way, we can overcome doubt and we can see more clearly. And so these are the 5 hindrances. Do you remember what they are? So the hindrance of sense desire. What's the image that the Buddha uses? The image of colorful dye thrown in the water, all those things tempting us. Sense desire is the first hindrance. Second, ill will, bubbling, boiling water. Third, sloth and torpa, or dullness and drowsiness, like water covered in algae and pond slime. Fourth, restlessness and remorse, like waves chopping up the water. The fifth, doubt, like muddy water, can't see anything. So when a mind has these hindrances, we're not clear, we're not peaceful, our mind is not powerful. The Buddha said it's like a channel of water, a fast-moving river, a powerful, fast-moving river, and then we come along and we carve out channels from that river. And of course, the power of the mind, the power of that water, dissipates when we have a hindrance. The water is diverted off to those side channels. So the energy of the mind is diverted into these hindrances, and we lose power, we lose clarity. So that's why it's so important to overcome the hindrances as part of our practice. What we're working towards is reducing those defilements, like we're purifying the mind, purifying the gold, purifying the mind through our practice of meditation. And this allows for those hindrances to diminish. We understand, oh, these hindrances have many drawbacks. That anger in my mind is bubbling and boiling and agitating. It's like that bowl of water. This is how we can use the similes of the Buddha to understand our process of meditation. This is how we understand why it's important to have ethical conduct. It's why we understand it's important to have sila. All of these images combine to help us understand why this is important. And by practicing good, kind, generous acts, by practicing good ethical conduct, and by developing our mind towards purifying it to good states, then we get the good results. These are all meritorious deeds. And remember that image at the beginning of the ocean. Each one of these small deeds is of incalculable merit. Just like that ocean is incalculable, all of our actions of generosity, of ethical conduct, and developing our mind will have powerful effects in the future and also in the present. We can see it now, and we know that there'll be good results. So these are some images that I use, that I love. I hope you don't mind me sharing my favorites with you, that have helped me grow on the spiritual path. And I offer them to you today, hoping that they can help you too. And I thank you for being here. Thank you for the Mahasatipatthana Buddhist Society of Klang for inviting me. And I'm sorry it's such a rambling talk. I hope that some of it made sense. And I can stick around with some questions if there's any.
Thank you, Bhante, for today's sharing. I like the simile of the tortoise. Okay, now you all, whoever has questions can unmute themselves and ask Bhante any questions that you may have regarding this talk or any meditation issues that you may have. All the water at the participant quite clear, Bhante.
Oh, here we have a question about doubt. Thanks, Jack. It's hard to tell if I'm practicing meditation properly or in the right way. How do I tell? Easy. Are you getting good results? Are you moving towards more wholesome, more positive states? Or are your bad states, unwholesome states, increasing? So we want to see in our meditation practice that we're moving away from unwholesome, unskillful, unhelpful states of mind towards states that are more wholesome and more helpful and more skillful. And so usually these will be things like moving away from those hindrances and moving towards being free from those hindrances. That's why it's important to understand when those hindrances are present, being able to label them, and also really important to understand when they're not there, noting their absence. This is one of the instructions in the Satipatthana Sutta. We should know when they're there, what caused them, where did they come from. We should know when they're not there and how they vanished. And so this is the basic instruction. If you're becoming agitated in your meditation or angry, or if you're becoming tired or sleepy, then there's something not quite right going on, perhaps. We want to make sure that we're moving away from unhelpful states to more helpful states, beneficial states. So you want to see a progression in your practice. And I'm not just talking about individual sessions. I'm talking about the big picture. Because, individual sessions, up and down, we want to see over time, am I improving? Am I becoming a better person? When I come to sit, am I happy to sit? Do I feel good about myself and my actions? This is how you can start to tell, how your meditation is progressing. So if you have doubts, then you should make sure you listen to lots of teachers who you trust, and to inquire what the suttas say. And you'll see that that's always the case, that our wholesome qualities should increase and our unwholesome qualities should decrease. So if that's happening for you, then you're doing well. If your unwholesome qualities are increasing, then you have to look at what you're doing in your practice and your life. And Gan says, during sitting meditation, you feel your body shaking. Why is that so? Well, it depends. There's good shaking and bad shaking, I guess, or there's kind of shaking that comes with joyful states like rapture. So if when the shaking is happening, you're experiencing a lot of pleasure in your mind, and that's just bodily experience of piti, rapture. If it's shaking like spasming, it could be that you're sitting incorrectly. It could be that you're tense and too tight, and that you're putting too much stress on your bones and muscles, and the body is twitching in response. So that's why you should relax the body as much as you can. And so I need to know a little bit more, Gan, if you're having nice thoughts at the time or good mental states, or if it's something that's painful or irritating. And then we have a question from Senghua Tan. Wonder if recollecting our good acts brings about arrogance and conceit, how to prevent that? Well, it's possible, but it's more important to identify with those good qualities in ourselves. And I find, especially in Western countries, we have this concept of, prideful arrogance, which is a hangover from the Christian culture. And it means that people don't feel like they can identify with these good qualities that they have in themselves, which is a great shame, because the Buddha encouraged us to identify with those good qualities. That it was something that we should feel good about, that we should feel is a good example to the world of how to live. We shouldn't become inflated with these things. We shouldn't go around telling everyone, I'm a good, kind, generous person. We see this happen, though, in philanthropy. Like, people are quite happy to donate for a hospital if it has their name on it, for example. We should still have some humility, especially when we're dealing with other people. But in the privacy of our own mind, we should feel good about these acts, not because we're a good person, not because we're a rich person, we're able to, not because we're a figure of renown in our community, but simply because this is the right thing to do. And being generous, the Buddha said, is an ornament for our mind. So we don't want to think that I'm the generous one, but this act of generosity is the right thing to do. Can you see the difference? We do want to identify with it, but not overly identify with it, in that we don't want to become proud or conceited, as you say, but we don't want to allow ourselves to, we don't want to not allow ourselves to appreciate just how powerful it is to have a mind that is kind and generous, how wonderful it is to have this mind. And think about it. There are so many people in this world who are completely selfish, who don't care a jot about anyone else but themselves, who will do anything for greed. These people exist, right? We know some of them, perhaps. They never share. They don't give. What is the quality of their mind? What is the quality of the mind of someone who gives? They're open-hearted, kind and generous. This is such a beautiful mind to have. So if you don't identify with those good qualities. What are you going to identify with? It's much better to identify with those qualities of generosity, because it's so beautiful. And we're lessening and eradicating minds of selfishness, of greed, of miserliness. So if you don't want to identify with the good stuff, then see if you can try to not identify with the bad stuff that you're abandoning, if you get what I mean. Let go of thinking that it's me who's generous and kind, rather think it's me who's coming out of greed and miserliness. So I hope that helps a little bit. Oh, it's one new message. Oh, it's nice, thank you. Well, that's good, very good. And so today we've practiced some generosity by recollecting generosity, and hopefully you will see the benefit in your mind. So if you see that, then you'll value it. You know, if you never see that, then you won't be able to value it. But certainly the Buddha really encouraged identifying with generosity. Sometimes, says Rachel or Raquel, it's kind of hard to balance the dana and the bhavana in terms of time and effort spent. Dana would take up a lot of time, especially during big scale project. Don't have to worry about big scale projects. You just have to worry about the people around you. That's all. So are you kind and generous to the people in your life? Don't wait for a big project to come along. Be kind and generous now, every day, to the people around you. Or transform the way you see your behavior. If you're giving the dog food, rejoice. I'm caring for this creature. That's what I do here with the leftover rice from our meal. I give it to the pigeons and I stand and I watch them. I have satisfaction in my heart. And it's easy just to throw the food, but actually to think, I'm giving. This is giving. It's different, right? Transforms an action you're already doing into a beautiful spiritual experience. And the same with things like giving someone a seat on the train, or giving someone a compliment, or doing a small thing like making a meal for someone in your household, or just doing something small and simple. This is more important than waiting for a big project. Do simple things regularly that are kind and generous, and this will impact your mind in a really powerful way and benefit all of those people around you. So I hope that makes sense. We just do what we can with what we've got. And it doesn't have to be material. Giving is not restricted to material things like money or food or clothes or whatever. Giving is time. Giving is volunteering. Giving is also things like I said, listening to a friend, or sharing the Dharma is also giving. You know, being an example of kindness in the world is also giving. Very good. I'm guessing it's probably time to finish up. Terence?
Thank you, Mate. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Now, we have listened to Dharma for about 2 hours plus. We have accumulated numerous ocean of benefits, right, Monday?
Let's do. I'll just do a quick. Should we just do a quick one, because I know that we're a bit over time.
Okay.
And so we also practice. Oh, okay, we've got to do that one. Okay, that's really long. Okay. Do you want to do that one?
Yes, please, Monday. Just
okay.
Two pages.
2 pages. Okay.
Oh,
I was just
dedication of Mary.
Okay. Akasata chabhumata devanaga mahidika punyang tang adumoditwa chiram rakantu lokasasanam etawata cha amhe hi sampadang punya sampadang Sabe Deva, Sabe Bhuta, Sabe Sata, Anumodantu, Sabe Sampati Sitiya. Idam me nyatinyam hotu sukita hontu nyateyo. Idam me nyatinam hotu sukita hontu nyateyo. Idam me nyatinam hotu sukita hontu nyateyo. And the last one, the aspiration. Imina punya kamena mame bala samangamo satang samagamo hotu awani banapatiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So that adds another part of our punya is dedicating the merits. So that's good. So we've done everything we can today to generate meritorious deeds. So congratulations to you all. I hope it brings you a lot of happiness for yourselves and happiness for others now and in the future.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Brother Terence.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in.
Thank you.
Let's dedicate some time to visit Bhante when he is in Malaysia, somewhere at the end of the between October to December, right, Bhante?
Yes, I look forward to seeing you. I hope we can meet in real life. And anything that you want to hear about in terms of teaching, please let Terence know, and we can put something together. And it'd be lovely to be with your community.